I was vice president with Barack, he allowed me to put together a budget for Amtrak from Charlotte, another line going from in Florida down to Tampa, another line. If we had moved, Gov, we'd have that tunnel fixed in New York now.
Big disgrace! Big disgrace! Big disgrace!
We were at an elementary school earlier today to get educators and school staff vaccinated. Ambitious, talented students were up to that. An awful lot of folks who, by the way, I have to admit, if I didn't have these positions, I'd be sleeping in the Lincoln bedroom rather than the president's bedroom. But it really, it really. Now, if I could hold a second here, my plan revitalizes in under 6 years of age. Your state, if you get 4 years out of here, or two years out of here, here's an example of that choice. Only the gains above people making $2 million a year, a couple. Folks, trickle-down economics anyway, I won't go into it. I get a little carried away with this.
Big disgrace! Big disgrace! Big disgrace!
Finally, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Today, I'm proud to nominate David Chipman to serve as the director of the AFT. David knows the AFT well.
Big disgrace! Big disgrace! Big disgrace!
The Democrat Party does not love this country.
White supremacists, Nazi sympathizers, carrying Nazi flags, Jews. No one nation can deal with all the crises of our time.
As a matter of fact, as each day goes by, demonstrates that it hates this country.
Pandemic.
So does the President of the United States.
The climate crisis.
You listen to that State of Confusion speech, it was abundantly clear.
Systemic racism in our criminal justice system.
We never talked about liberty.
Gun violence has become an epidemic in America.
He never talked about personal responsibility.
The insurrection was an existential crisis, a test of whether our democracy could survive.
He never talked about unalienable rights.
But the struggle is far from over.
He never talked about property rights.
After just 100 days, I can report to the nation, America is on the move again.
He never talked about the things upon which this nation was based.
Peril into possibility.
Joe Biden and the Democrat Party want to fundamentally change America. If you want to fundamentally change something, you don't like it.
Crisis to opportunity.
As a matter of fact, you hate it.
Setbacks in the strength.
Massive taxation, massive regulation, massive spending, massive debt.
Can't stop now.
They're undermining our police, they're undermining our military, they're pushing racism in our schools. So
we're at a great inflection point in history.
Drugs pouring across the border, you have massive child abuse going on there, and Joe Biden doesn't give a damn.
We have to do more than just build back better. We have to build back better.
They picked the teachers' union and the muscle of that union over educating our children.
My fellow Americans, trickle-down economics has never worked.
They're igniting inflation as we speak. Wide open southern border. You have MS-13, drugs pouring across the border.
It's time for corporate America and the wealthiest 1% of Americans to just begin to pay their fair share.
People are constantly at each other's throats. They are strengthening the regime in Iran, which threatens to shoot nuclear missiles at us once they acquire them. He's kowtowing to the communist Chinese.
I think you should be able to become a billionaire and a millionaire, but pay your fair share.
He aims to destroy the Supreme Court, pack the Senate, eviscerate the election laws. Does this sound like a man and a party that love this country? I don't think so.
Just say, for the record, I support all that.
You said Black Lives Matter.
I support them looting.
I worked here, part-time. Plus, I'm a part owner of this store.
Dollar Tree.
You said Black Lives Matter. Why don't you choke me? I'm black. Look what you did to my store. We've been here all night cleaning up. Black people standing right here with them. Black people. me. Black Lives Matter. You lied. You lied.
It looked like the ending scene in Die Hard, the knock.
Manning Johnson was a Negro, and he was also a member of the Communist Party. He joined the party as a young man because he honestly believed that the communists were trying to improve the conditions of his people. He was a dedicated communist. But after many years, Manning Johnson finally came to the realization that the communists weren't the least bit interested in improving the conditions of the Negro people. He discovered that instead they were merely planning to use his people, and these are his words, to use them as cannon fodder in a bloody revolution to destroy America. As early as 1928, the communists declared that the racial differences among our people constituted the weakest and most vulnerable point in our social fabric. By constantly probing and straining at this one spot, they calculated that eventually the cloth could be torn apart and that Americans could be divided, weakened, and perhaps even set against each other in open combat. We must not be led into placing the blame for the riots, the civil disorders, on the Negro people of our nation. Even those few who are promoting hatred and violence in the black communities are not themselves the cause. They're merely being used by forces far bigger than they are to promote the violent phase of the revolution in America. Hoping to avoid further violence and bloodshed, the public is to be pressured into accepting measures that will move the country gradually and legally toward communism, but without calling it that. The strategy of the proletarian revolution calls for the quiet conversion of our government into a communist regime, but under the banner of socialism. The new program of the Communist Party on this subject has this to say. The term socialism describes but the first stage of a new society that in its full development is called communism. Socialism is a transitional stage. The building of socialism is the communist revolution in America. It represents the process whereby our country can be moved gradually toward communism without the people even being aware of it. They have one and only one solution for all problems: more government, and then more and more until it's total government. Total government is communism. We must not be fooled into thinking that the causes of our civil turmoil are such things as poverty, poor housing, lack of education, and similar social or economic factors. As a matter of fact, most of today's self-styled revolutionaries, black and white, come from good homes, could earn better than average incomes if they wanted to work. And in fact, they're products of some of the finest institutions of higher learning. We mustn't resort to violence either as a means of furthering political or social goals. And we must do everything humanly possible to discourage others from doing so. We must support our local police. Nothing can be quite so damaging to police morale and efficiency as converting every arrest into a trial of the policeman instead of the criminal.
Thank you, George Floyd, for sacrificing your life for justice.
You know, the purpose of immigration is not to support the country from which the immigrant comes from, or even the immigrant. The purpose of immigration has historically been what's in the best interest of the American people. But when you believe the American people are systemically racist, you don't really care what's in the best interest of the American people.